Hell have no fury like a woman scorned. I have no idea who came up with that phrase, but I guarantee they probably used it to describe St. Olga's bloody revenge. Olga was born into a noble Kievan Rus family in around 890 AD. Now, that usually would be a random fact tossed in, but the Kievan Rus were more or less a Viking group of tribes that came together, and it was very influential for Olga because of the fact that she actually grew up with a little bit more rights than most women in Christian society at the time. Similar to the Christians at the time, though, she was married early off in her life because, well, she was a noblewoman. So in 903, she was married to Igor of Kiev of the Rurik dynasty. After that, not much is said of her for the next 40 or so years. I mean, Igor's off fighting Christians, bringing them closer to Jesus, and she just pretty much has a son and rules the realm in his name. Yes, I said that, rules it, because, again, in that society, she was able to have some say. 945 AD, everything kind of changes. Igor comes back from raiding the Christians, and let's just say the treaty he gets is not that great. The terms restricted a lot of trade that the Kievan Rus were able to do with the Christians at the time, which obviously reduced a lot of money, so Igor had to go get some taxes for the first time in a long time. And one of these stops was the Drevlians. You don't really need to know much about the Drevlians besides the fact that they lived a little bit east of modern-day Kiev here, and they were a sizable tribe. Not very wimpy by any standard, but again, they are still subservient to the Kievan Rus crown. It's been a while since they've been bothered to pay them, and on top of being bothered to pay them, Igor's bringing them a new treaty that pretty much says, hey, you're going to be making a lot less money as well too. Reluctantly, they pay. I don't know why, but they did. So Igor goes on his way, everything seems fantastic. Now Igor doesn't have a massive party with him, it's more of just a travel band, but somehow he gets the grand idea of, I haven't collected money from these guys and they gave it to me. I wonder if I can go back and get more. So betting it on black again, he goes right back to the Drevlians, asking for more money. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, I'd be very perturbed if I was asked to pay more taxes after already paying taxes and then being told I'm gonna earn less money. The Drevlians are having a similar thought as me, except they take it a little bit further than I think I ever would. On top of saying no to the extra money, they proceeded to kill every member of Igor's party that accompanied him, and then went into the woods to find two perfectly nice birch trees that are right next to each other. What they do with these birch trees is bend them down, tie Igor's legs to it, and then... I hate taxes as much as the next guy, but this is a whole new level of tax avoidance, guys. News of Igor's death is sent right to Olga, and on top of that news, she also receives a marriage proposal from Prince Mal of the Drevlians. Wait, get the fuck out. Seriously? I guess this is how you raise up women in the 900s. Before we continue, I do want to remind you that Olga did live in a pseudo-Viking pagan society, and when Igor was away doing his, bringing people closer to Jesus, she was actually in charge. She was running things, keeping order, making sure people were happy, and overall, people liked her. The Kievan Rus want to go to war and wipe the Drevlians off the freaking map because, well, they killed Igor, they like Olga, let's go kill everyone for Olga. Pretty straightforward, except Olga has something else in mind. She allows the delegation to come into the palace and more or less discuss terms of the marriage and peace agreement. Being the great hostess that she was, she throws a marvelous feast for the ambassadors and diplomats and whoever that have come. They're drinking, they're eating, they're having a grand old time. And after all that, it gets a little late, so she sends them back to the boats. When the Drevlian ambassadors woke up, they didn't wake up to being in the water. They woke up to being carried through the streets of Kiev. It was freaking Mardi Gras. Food, drinking, yelling, celebrating, titties were everywhere. It was a grand old time. Except not for the Drevlians. During the night, the Kievan Rus actually dug a massive trench that not only is going to fit the ambassadors, but also the frickin' boat. Tossing all of them in at once, they proceed to be burying them alive, and Olga watches on through the whole thing, straight-faced. Because cell phones won't be invented for another 1,000 years, she sends messages to Prince Mal saying, "Sup, your boys are having a good time here, but I'm a grand princess, so I demand to be escorted by your most noble and distinguished gentleman." That can't be right. The prince does not check up on his delegation, maybe because he doesn't care about them or because he's dumbfounded at the fact that Olga agreed to all of this in the first place. So he sends out his nobles and they begin a couple-day journey on horseback over to Kiev to meet Olga and bring her over. After a couple days, the noble delegation arrives and Olga greets them at the gate saying, "What's up, guys? How you been? Must have been a terrible ride because you guys stink." Noblemen are looking at each other like, "What do you mean we stink? It's just horses." And she's like, "Yeah, I don't like the smell of horses that much, so you guys need to go take a bath. But don't worry, I got the hottest baths in the world. You will never find a hotter bath. In fact, it may be the hottest bath of your life." Unaware of the landscaping that was also just done around the area, they follow Olga to the bathhouse because why wouldn't you believe her, I guess? Following her along, they're obviously drinking, eating, having a grand old time inside the bathhouse until Olga locks the doors from the outside. Once again, Olga, being the hostess with the mostest and following through on all of her promises, she sets the bathhouse on fire, incinerating everyone inside and guaranteeing that they did have the hottest bath of their life. Testing her luck even more, she requests a funeral feast or a tirzna to be had for her late husband, Igor, where he died. Instead of saying no or even asking how his boys are doing, the prince agrees. Being the Gothic mommy of medieval Europe, Olga receives zero pushback as to where the delegation from the boat is or where the nobility is located, so they proceed to have the feast and drink more than Buffalo after the 2005 AFC Championship. Historians refer to this feast as the Bloody Feast because after the Drevlians got themselves pretty well drunk, Olga and her people murder-stabbed about 5,000 of them. After the massacre, Olga returns to Kiev, gathers the rest of the army, and then absolutely wipes the floor with the Drevlians, pushing them back into essentially their capital, where is modern-day Khorasan. Right here. The prince and the remaining nobles are held up in there for about a year, and overall, it's pretty much stalemated. Not much is happening, no one's really breaking through, and everything kind of seems stuck. Getting tired of the dog and pony show that is this siege, Olga sends messages to the Drevlians with pretty reasonable terms, except with one weird condition. She requests 3 sparrows and 3 pigeons from each house to be given over to their army. Prince Maul the Simp, asking very little questions on top of everything else as to why she may want the birds, hands everything over to Olga as requested. If you guys don't remember, pigeons were used primarily in World War I as essentially messengers because they would always find their way back home or their nest where the command post usually would be to deliver messages. Now, sparrows are very similar, just smaller birds, so Olga has a very unique idea planned for this city of Khorasan. Attaching burning sulfur to each of the birds, she lets them go where they're only going to go one place, back home, and back home is where all the wooden structures are in Khorasan, so the city goes up in flames. Not much is known, but historians believe the Prince of Simps, Prince Maul, dies in the fire with the remaining nobility, while Olga watches on, stating, and I quote, "Now we're even." After conducting the greatest revenge story in history, uniting the country under her leadership, solidifying her as the first female leader of the Kievan Rus, she goes on a side quest to become a saint now. It begins with a trip to Constantinople. Yes, the same city Igor tried invading and plundering and failing. She gets to visit as more or less a delegate. The emperor at the time, Constantine VII, greets Olga and, following Prince Maul, wants to marry Olga as well too. Instead of Olga saying her classic no, which included burning, burying, and stabbing, she actually takes a different route. See, she's still a pagan, and pagans and Christians cannot get married at the time, so she needs to convert to Christianity, which she actually does. The key thing is, though, when a woman in her position, she can't just have any normal people be her godparents while she's being baptized. So she asked the emperor himself to be her godparent, which he says yes, because, again, you don't say no to your Viking mommy. After the baptism, the emperor asks for her hand in marriage once again. Olga refuses, except she cites the fact that since she's baptized and since he was her godfather, he is technically her dad in the eyes of the church, and there's no union that would be cemented by any Christian leader for them being together due to this Christian law. Now, Olga didn't just convert to Christianity to trick the emperor out of some money and some gifts. She actually did it because she was a believer, and she spread those beliefs throughout the Kievan Rus people and nobility alike. She had several churches constructed, and overall, the vibe was a little bit untrustworthy because they've been fighting wars against the Christians for years now, so they're a little bit hesitant. But if Olga was down with Jesus, I guess they could be at least tolerant of Jesus as well, too. Olga's final days were actually spent defending against a siege while her son Slatislav was coming to relieve and more or less be the savior of the day. He comes through at the last minute, destroying the remaining army that's sieging and freeing everyone within this captured city. Soon after the siege was relieved, it was found that Olga was already ill and not doing too well due to the fact that she was pretty old at the time and modern medicine, it was not a thing. Because of Olga's great leadership and just compassion for her people, when the state did recognize Christianity as its essentially central religion with her grandson Vladimir, they decided to make Olga the patron saint of the Ukrainian Russian Orthodox Church. I hope you guys had a great time listening. Anyway, this is the link if you want to send me a beer. I've been the Gopher, you've been the internet. Like, comment, do the fun stuff. Cheers! Like, there's no way my wife is ever going to do a vengeance tour like this for me, and I'm starting to wonder if she even likes me at this point.